when you're starting to move towards a platform, you have to look at where customers are going to start because you want to that motivates them to, start with you as a company, but then also creates a roadmap for them to continue to expand with you and increase that lifetime value that you're looking for.
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, the product marketing community that gives back. Product Marketing Hive and this podcast are supported by Product Marketing Edge, a technology product marketing consulting firm. In this episode, Dave Panek, partner at Aventi Group, shares his thoughts on product market fit. Let's dive into it right now. Hi, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Louise. Glad to be here.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself. So how did you get into product marketing?
Yeah, no, it's been an interesting ride for sure. I've always worked for technology companies. I've been fascinated with technology, but also the business side of it as well. My journey really started in the early 90s as a consultant for technology companies and solution companies. And so for me, it really was just kind of a natural evolution to move from, being in the field to helping companies understand, the solutions that we could provide for them at a macro level. Product marketing for me was a perfect fit, right? It really was that combination of understanding the products and solutions and how to best serve our customers. And it was really important to me then, as it is now, is looking at it from the customer's perspective. What are they looking for? What are their challenges? And how can I help solve for that with the companies I'm working with?
Great. So our topic today is product market fit. Before we dive further, tell us, how would you define product market fit?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know a lot of folks look at it in different ways or through different lenses. And for me, it's really about how well a product serves and scales to its target customers, right? And so there's a direct correlation to product market fit and business growth, and it's amplifying the target audience they're going after. And a company's growth trajectory, the more linear it is, the more you're scaling against the revenue that you want and the target audience that you want. But it takes work, right? It takes time to get there. It doesn't always happen, from day one. A lot of companies have a product first approach, and as they work through and they have a great idea, they take to market and are finding the market for that. But then as they start to shift a little bit, understanding that they found that target market, they know that they need to then figure out a way to drive repeatable business, right, and repeatable revenue once they move there, and that's where that product market fit comes into play, right? And for me, it's about repeated revenue, being revenue connected to your target audience or your target market. And there's this concept that I call non-repeatable revenue. It's something that I've seen a number of times throughout my career in different organizations, and it's important, right? Because it helps to unpack if there's different target markets that you may approach going forward, and it helps to sort of test, right? There's also a tight correlation around sort of minimally viable with that as well, and testing the market. And it's really understanding whether or not there's opportunity to scale with that revenue by trying different use cases and different different target markets that you might be going after. And then once you find that you're really solving a repeatable problem, right? Then obviously that can move into repeatable revenue.
So you have been involved in few projects developing product market fit. Can you describe the process of discovery and validating the product market fit? What are the steps or methodologies do you recommend product marketers to follow?
Yeah, and for me, it's always been a little bit of art and science. The art part of it is having a sense of the trajectory of a market, the behaviors that customers are looking to move towards or solve for, the journey that they're undertaking. What are the factors that they're seeing from a competitive perspective where they might need products to help solve for them. But the science part of it is really about trying to paint a picture of the validation of that product market fit through data, right? And if you can get the data, that helps you as a product marketing leader or specialist in the products you're serving to help form the ideation around product market fit. I'm a big believer in jobs to be done, and that's really starting to start at the foundational level, right? If you can get in there and understand the users day to day and the challenges that they have, and whether or not the products that you're providing to the market are solving for it, that really helps understands the connection point between the challenges and whether or not there's a product market fit associated with it. That's why I'm a big believer in product marketers working closely with customers, because you really start to unpack and understand what they're facing day in and day out, and how the products that you're bringing to market can help solve for that, going forward. And you had a question, Louise, about sort of methodologies and approach to get there. There's a lot of conversations about, TAM, which is really the addressable market that you're going after, and making sure that it's big enough, right, to help solve for that going forward. In reality, though, and I know a lot of folks have talked about this, it's really about service attainable market, right? Which is, what is the revenue you can capture with your existing resources today, right? There's always the theoretical target market that you can go after, but you can only do so much, right? Within a company, and your product can only take it so far given where you're at, right? And so it's first of all understanding what that market potential is, and then making sure that you're capturing as much of that market as possible going forward. And so what does that look like, right? And how do you know, and what is the approach to get there, right? Well, once you've figured out the jobs to be done, then you start to really, get into the qualitative and quantitative understanding of your customers, right? And so on the qualitative side, you want to understand the why, right, behind decision making, and what motivates them to move from doing nothing or business as usual to wanting to acquire your product or solution, right? And it provides directional guidance, right? And as you sort of point these data points together that I'm talking about, and then obviously quantitative is important too, right? Which is really about the what, right? What are they interested in most? What drives their decision making? What are the steps that they look at when they're trying to make that decision going forward? And that helps to validate the hypotheses as you look to sort of understand the data that's driving whether or not you have that right product market fit. Of course, win-loss is important, right? And many product marketers get into that because that helps gauge your win ratio and why particular opportunities are closing and which not. And that can be fed back into, your product roadmap going forward. And I love the idea of obviously getting out and talking with analysts and influencers in particular markets, because it starts to show that the product that you're bringing to market is solving for a validated problem, right? And when you start to have interest beyond where you're at, you've created a category, you're part of a category, and those analysts and those influencers are helping look at that as well, right? And of course, throughout all this, you have to look at the metrics as you're pulling together and starting to look at that picture. Pipeline metrics has the problem been identified in terms of number of leads that you're bringing into your organization? Are you converting those leads? Are you growing customer lifetime value? I love things like customer acquisition costs because that's a good understanding of sort of the friction that's come into play in obtaining customers. All of this that I described is sort of then leads to an informed picture of the go-to-market for that product or solution. and how close it is to product market fit. And really, that's why it's a combination of art and science.
Great insight. Thank you for walking us through the process. So you have been involved in projects where companies grow from product-based strategy to platform-based strategy. Tell us a little bit more about it. What has changed from product to platform, both internally and externally?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite areas because it's really an inflection point within a company, right? And we talked a little bit before about the idea of moving from one product to multiple products, and then typically there's a point in the maturity of a company where a company feels they've saturated the market with the current product, right? They reached their service obtainable market with where they're at. They feel they need to start selling higher in an organization, and that allows them to up level the buyer, and by the way, bring in higher revenue because they moved up in the organization. And that's really where a shift from a product to a platform starts to take shape, right? It also may be from a competitive perspective, right? Because as they're going into opportunities, others might be offering a more holistic solution, right? Or a more expansive solution, or, a broader range of solutions. And so you need to increase your number of products, right? To help, differentiate against the competition and where you're at. And so you start to move up and become a platform player because it's the right point in your journey as an organization. You have to look at where customers are going to start, right? And then you start to look at the bundling strategy and the packaging strategy against the markets you're serving, right? Because if you're serving multiple segments, let's say, for example, you might be servicing a mid-market, but also the enterprise, right? You want to create different bundling strategies that motivates them to, start with you as a company, but then also creates a roadmap for them to continue to expand with you and increase that lifetime value that you're looking for. And to me, it's a fascinating part of a company's evolution going forward, and because it can reap so many benefits, for that company, right? For marketing and sales, or even the company as a whole, everybody is now aligned, right? Instead of trying to have going to market with different products with different messaging points, you're all aligned around sort of a singular message that a platform view can bring. The sales process can be less complex, right? Because you've really given them a vision, the sales team a vision about how to start and which areas to start within the platform going forward. And then obviously the product organization has that, full vision of what you're doing as a platform play or as a cloud player, that allows them to sort of making sure that they're shifting and moving their product roadmap in the areas to help them differentiate, going forward. And what's really important to this, as a company moves from a product to a platform strategy, product marketing plays a really important role in this journey, right? Because they're there to drive alignment with the executive team, with product and sales and marketing. How? Well, they're defining the messaging, they're defining the positioning that platform will become. They're helping define how each of the products will become a messaging pillar or a part of that portfolio strategy going forward. They'll define things like the architecture, so that can be visualized going forward. And I really, as a company moves from a product strategy to a platform strategy, I really think of it as a launch, right? A major launch for a company. And so obviously product marketing plays an important role in that. of building out that plan, building out the content, all right, to help support that launch, whether it's obviously new pitch decks, getting into videos, sales enablement, and playbooks, both internal and external, the website, how you're reimagining that as you shift and going forward, and reimagining how the company is going to be moving forward from a single product strategy to a platform strategy.
Can you share one example with us? How did they achieve their product market fit?
Yeah, yeah, no, happy to do that. As I mentioned, this is one of my favorite areas to focus on. I've done it 4 times over with various companies in the past, but one of my favorites was I was brought on as head of product marketing for a marketing technology provider. And this was right after a series of acquisitions, in this area. And so each acquisition basically had its own go-to-market, each acquisition with its own product, and they took it to market independently within the company. And so the challenge was really how to bring together each acquisition and subsequently each product that was a part of that acquisition, since they were going to market independently, how to bring it together into a singular go-to-market, strategy. It was important because there was a lot of message confusion, right? And sales complexity without a strong playbook for the team going forward, right? So it was really important to sort of figure out how to pull this all together. And I guided the transformation from, a multi-product go-to-market to, a platform, or we called it a cloud first go-to-market. And as a leader of the organization, it involved crafting the platform value proposition and the vision that we wanted to go forward. It was about developing the messaging pillar strategy based on the products that we were bringing to market and different use cases they would each solve on the path that a company would be on with us. It would be creating the launch assets. What's great about this too, one of my favorite things to do is it really allows you to move from sort of product feature conversation to a full platform strategy, which allows you to get into more of a story-based approach, right? Unpacking the story and the narrative of how that cloud platform is solving for a customer, right? And one of my favorite things I like to do is shifting from sort of product strategy to a customer really makes the customer a hero, right? And so how do you pull together a narrative that really allows them to understand how all of these different products are working together to help solve for them, going forward. It involved, moving from the product to that platform strategy, playbooks, the website relaunched, obviously the marketing content that I've talked about in the past. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, it helps up level, right? And so instead of selling to individual business owners for each product, we were able to up level and sell to the CMO, which brings a stronger price point, for that platform strategy going forward. The great thing about this pivot is, as much as it's allowing the market to coalesce around the idea of the platform strategy and up leveling to the CMO, internally, it also created a much more cohesive go-to-market with marketing and sales and product, like the things we described before, because you have a simplified go-to-market with a strong singular message that you're taking market that sales can use, and obviously marketing can use in their outreach as well.
Thank you. What are some common challenges companies face when they are trying to achieve product market fit?
Yeah, I was sprinkling a couple of these as we were talking about product market fit and how it all come together. But for sure, one of the big issues is there can be a lack of coherent messaging, right? Which confuses not only the customers, right? Because they're getting different types of messages across, the products that you're working with them on or positioning in the market. But it also can, it's also confusing, right? And there's complexity for sales, right? Because they're trying to figure out, you know, there's all these different types of messaging that can go to market because you're testing out new ideas or testing out new MVPs, or you have different products you might be trying to bring to market and seeing if there's a a scalable or repeatable revenue for that. And not only that, as you're sort of trying to test this, right? You don't have that repeatable product market fit. Sometimes you're positioning all those products to the same buyer, right? And so obviously that can be confusing to the buyer, going forward. And there's high expectations internally on the marketing team to be able to, move the needle for all the products that you're selling and positioning in parallel, right? And so there's challenges with marketing, there's challenges with sales, obviously, and there's challenges with the markets you're serving, right? And so those are things you're really trying to resolve by having a strong, product market fit.
Do you have any recommendations on good business strategy books to read?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of books that I touch on and look through all the time, but I always go back to the classics. And you can sort of see, and what I've been sharing here earlier. I love the Lean Startup. I love Lean Analytics, and the reason is because they really do provide a strong roadmap for the journey you should undertake as you're trying to build that product market fit. And not only are you on track for it, but are you measuring for it, right? And what are the right ways to think about measuring for that so that you can reach that trajectory of a really tight product market fit.
Great. So we're coming to the end of our time here. Do you have any final thoughts?
For me, and this is really important as a product marketing organization, getting a seat at the table, right, to help shape product market fit, it takes time, right? And trust needs to be built so that you can help influence, right, evangelize within the organization. What is that strong product market fit? Because inherently product marketers have that knowledge, right? They're looking at the data points I discussed earlier around win-loss or the market or what the analysts are saying, through the surveys they're doing with potential customers and the like. And to get there, really, it's about focusing on the quick wins, right? And the number one way to do that is you may have a hunch or a hypothesis, but back it up with data, right? And so start to work through some of the things I talked about before, right? Build out a win-loss analysis to help show how far or how close you are to win-loss, right? Build out sort of a survey or a qualitative approach to understanding what behaviors are driving. Build out the jobs to be done, right? To help understand whether or not you're helping solve for that problem, and obviously get in front of customers as a product marketing organization. That helps build a story that you want to tell to the executive team and helps you get a seat at the table, right, as you go forward.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to.
Thank you for tuning into This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources, including training, playbooks, templates, and events. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.